8:37 Morning Majority. Good Tuesday morning to you, Brian Eamon. Matt Lewis from the Daily Caller in this morning. Pleased to be joined, as always, by Larry Kudlow, CNBC host. Kudlow Report. You can see him 7 o'clock tonight on CNBC. Also hosts The Call at 11 this morning on CNBC. You can hear him on the radio, 6:30 WMAL. Check him out Saturday nights, 7 o'clock in the evening here on WMAL. Good morning, Larry.
Good morning, Brian and Matt. We've never met, but I'm a big fan of the Daily Caller.
Oh, well, likewise.
Yeah,
good to talk to you.
That's, right back at you. Okay.
The president, Larry, is putting out a new plan for his tackle. He's going to tackle the debt now, and he put out the budget, didn't really do anything about it. Paul Ryan comes out, puts out the 2012 budget, gets a lot of people talking now. The president is going to counter that. What do you make of the president's move?
There's a couple of things going on here, and first of all, I'm going to be real interested to hear what he has to say tomorrow. I'm worried there's going to be a big tax hike component in that.
I think so too.
Very concerned about that from an investor standpoint and a good economic policy standpoint. But I do want to say one thing which I don't think I got right on last night's show.
Okay.
The story is this morning, President open to a deal to link budget cuts with the debt limit ceiling.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting. I had watched this Poofle, what's his name, Poofle.
Pluff, David Pluff.
On TV, and didn't really hear that. But I guess the spin is that there might be a better opportunity and a deal to raise the debt ceiling with some significant spending cuts or spending reforms, like a budget limitation, 20% of GDP, which I think is a very sensible reform, like the old Graham-Rudman, where you sequester or cut spending if you don't make the target.
Right.
If that is the case, if the White House is open to a deal, then the chances of a catastrophe on the debt ceiling expiration, where there'd be no more borrowing, those chances are diminished. Those chances are diminished, because I've been very worried that we'll wind up defaulting. We will not pay our interest expense on the federal debt because the Treasury can't sell any bonds after early July, or starting in May.
Right.
And that's a catastrophe for the financial markets. I can't emphasize enough. If, on the other hand, the White House is open to a deal and that they would allow some real spending reforms to accompany a debt ceiling increase, then we will be saved. And I rather like that. In fact, that could be bullish, depending on how it plays out. And there's going to be hardball politics right up to the end. It's not in front of us. It doesn't really start for a month. But I just want to make that point.
Yeah, well, you said a catastrophe. I'd like to ask you about that, because I get the sense that some people think it wouldn't be that big of a deal if we failed to raise the debt ceiling.
Those people would be wrong. I just want to tell you, the idea that we can't sell bonds to pay the interest on our debt is an utter disaster, Matt. Trust me on this, my friend. This is much different than the government shutdown. The government shutdown, we go on to tomorrow. We furlough unessential workers, but the Social Security checks get paid, right? If you can't sell more bonds after the ceiling is reached, the Social Security checks do not get paid, okay? Nothing gets paid. Most of all, the interest on the federal debt, which is owned globally and which is borrowed from our, shall we say, friends around the world, might not get paid. That is a default. That's the United States doing something that Argentina does. So this is very important, and with royal markets like you've never seen. I just want to tell you that.
I know that you're a big champion of the Tea Party and you've been supporting this movement, but there are a lot of people in the Tea Party and some of the freshman Republicans who say, we want to play hardball here. I think the leadership knows that they can't really mess around with that. Are you concerned, though, that people don't quite get what would happen if the debt ceiling isn't raised?
Well, I don't know. I think the Tea Party people I speak to do get it.
Okay.
And I want them to be hard line regarding a spending limitation or a spending reform. We have got to have some rules of the road to stop the unlimited borrowing, credit card, financing forever and ever. I agree with that. I'm all for it. But what I'm saying is they got to realize the stakes are very high. That's all. And that if the White House is willing to look at a compromise, if they're willing to go two-track, one track is the debt limit, and the other track attached to it is some serious spending reforms. For example, Paul Ryan has in his prosperity plan, or whatever he calls it, he's coming on our show tonight in the Kudlow Report.
Oh, cool.
if he wants strict limits on the level of, for example, discretionary domestic spending. And if you violate that limit, there's an across-the-board budget cut to take it out. I call it the old Graham-Rudman. It's a new version of the old Graham-Rudman. That's good. I'm all for that. And I'm all for limited government, and I'm all for tough spending. But I'm just saying, you got to understand how serious the debt ceiling is. If we can't sell bonds to finance our debt, our interest on the debt, that is really bad. And it could drive interest rates sky high. I mean, it really could.
I don't know if you read the op-ed in the Wall Street Journal a couple of weeks ago from Marco Rubio, but he essentially said, he wanted changes in Medicare, Medicaid, yes, Social Security, balanced budget amendments. I mean, things that he's never going to get from these things.
Right.
So, I mean, that's what I'm worried about. Marco Rubio is a pretty sensible guy.
He is. Marco's a good guy, and he's a smart guy, and he is correct on the policies. He is absolutely correct. The question is, what all can you get in the debt ceiling bill? That's really the big question. Coming back to your other point, I've been pretty disappointed. I mean, I don't know what the president's going to say tomorrow, Brian, but I was pretty disappointed in for example, all the talk about raising taxes. And I want to see what he's talking about on Medicare and Medicaid. In fact, as I said, we're going to have Paul Ryan on our CNBC show tonight at 7 o'clock to get a critique of that. And I just don't have any sense. If we're going to go into a class warfare, tax the rich battle all over again, that's just nutty as a fruitcake. That just doesn't make any sense to me at all. This is an exercise in holding down spending and then ultimately growing the economy through pro-growth tax reform. So I'm a little worried about that part. I don't know what's going to happen.
Speaking of Paul Ryan, I think part of his plan included means testing for Medicare, and a lot of people have attacked him for wanting to cut taxes on the rich. But means testing would essentially mean that if you're wealthy, you don't get money back from Medicare. Is that possible? Could that actually happen? And would it add up to anything?
Well, I think that I don't know if he calls it means testing, but I think in a practical manner, the government subsidy is going to be means tested. The government subsidy for Medicare, what you get to pay your insurance premiums, will be, in effect, means tested.
The amount of money you would get from the voucher would be,
Yeah, it's not actually a voucher, but basically you're right. And, yeah, how much? It's a sliding scale, and those at the lower end will get more assistance. Those at the upper end will get a lot less assistance. And incidentally, Brian, on your other point, I think it isn't tax cuts for the rich. It's tax reform. It's lower the rates, but take away all the loopholes and deductions to broaden the base. And it's real reform. Liberals should like it because it gets rid of all the K Street loopholes that do favor rich lobbyists. And conservatives should like it because it puts incentives in for lower marginal tax rates on the supply side. So, there's a lot of misunderstanding here. This stuff is difficult. There's a lot to swallow.
Yeah, it is, and it's confusing, and, that's why we like to have you on the show to try.
I have Romney coming on tonight, by the way. Just announced yesterday. I'm going to be asking him some questions about why he opposed extending the Bush tax cuts, by the way, back last December, and what's he going to do about Romney Care, and who should be fired from the White House. I want to ask him a couple of... You guys got any thoughts on what I should ask Governor
Ask
Romney?
him about that logo that looks like Aquafresh. Have you seen that thing?
That, and he's also using John Kerry's old slogan as well, apparently.
What's that?
I forget what it was called, but it was essentially America to Believe in or something like that.
No.
You'll have to Google it.
Well,
but
he's a fine man. It's just a lot of questions about his candidacy, and he just threw his hat in yesterday, so we're lucky enough the schedule has him coming on tonight, so that will be great.
And today is the 5-year anniversary of Romney Care.
Yeah.
I know, and they're having Romney Care birthday parties, aren't they?
Believe in America is the name of the slogan. So you got Romney and you got Paul Ryan on tonight on the show?
Yeah, we'll do some stock market work also.
Sounds good, Larry. We'll be watching. Thanks as always. We appreciate it.
Bye.
Larry Kudlow, CNBC. Check out Mitt Romney and Paul Ryan tonight. It's a great show on CNBC 7.